The Wild West was not what most people imagine. Not endless gunfights, not constant chaos. Because law did exist, it just didn't exist everywhere, and it didn't exist equally. In one town, justice meant a courthouse, a judge, and rules written on paper. In the next, justice meant a man with a badge and a gun deciding what happened in the moment. And just a few miles away, there was no justice at all. A traveler riding west in the 1800s would learn something quickly. Every town felt different, not just in size, but in law. One might welcome you with order, another might judge you before you spoke a word, and another might have no authority at all, only whoever was willing to enforce control. That inconsistency was the real Wild West. Not chaos, but unpredictability. And at the center of this fragile system stood the sheriff. One man, elected locally, expected to enforce law across counties so large they could take days to cross on horseback. In many cases, he was the only official authority for miles in every direction. There was no backup unit waiting nearby, no radio, no fast reinforcements, just him and whatever men he could convince to help him. A sheriff's life was constant pressure, too soft, and criminals ignored him completely, too harsh, and the town turned against him. He didn't just enforce law, he had to survive it. Men like Wyatt, Earp, and Masterson became famous in this world, not because they were untouchable legends, but because they had to constantly balance between lawmen and outlaw world just to stay alive. Most sheriffs didn't last long, not because of age, but because the job itself burned them out fast. But in many places, there was no sheriff at all, no courthouse, no authority, absolutely nothing. And when that happened, people created their own system. Miners formed informal courts to decide ownership of gold claims. Ranchers organized posses to hunt stolen cattle across hundreds of miles of open land. Entire communities acted as judge, jury, and executioner when they had no other option. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. And sometimes justice arrived too fast, driven by fear instead of truth. This was frontier justice, not chaos, but structure without institutions. And it had one fatal weakness. It depended on emotion, not consistency. Above all of this stood the U.S. Marshals, federal law in a land that barely recognized federal control. But there were very few of them. Only a few hundred marshals across the entire expanding United States, each responsible for vast territories, often operating alone, or with one or two deputies at most. One of the most legendary was Bass Reeves, a man who operated in Indian Territory, one of the most dangerous regions of the frontier. He arrested over 3,000 criminals in his lifetime, often traveling alone, often entering places where law simply did not exist. A marshal's life was not stable either. One day might be paperwork and tracking, the next, a week-long ride into unknown territory chasing a fugitive. And often, when he finally arrived, he found nothing but silence. No backup, no guarantee of safety, just the job. And then there were the Texas Rangers. Created in 1823 by Stephen F. Austin, they began not as a formal police force, but as survival units. Small groups of mounted men tasked with protecting early settlers in Texas from raids, bandits, and frontier violence. Over time, they became something more structured, but never large. Often only a few dozen to a few hundred men at most, covering an enormous frontier. There was no normal day for a ranger. One day, long patrols across empty land. The next, a 100-mile pursuit of cattle thieves. Another, responding to sudden violence in a settlement with no other law enforcement. They tracked fugitives across deserts, investigated crimes in towns without courts, and acted as both law enforcement and emergency response force. Fast, mobile, unpredictable, just like the frontier itself. To some people, they were heroes holding back chaos. To others, they were harsh enforcers of unstable justice. But their existence proved something simple. Slow law didn't work in a fast, scattered world. Only immediate force could, and this is the truth most myths miss. The Wild West was not lawless, it was inconsistent. Some towns had courts and structure, some had only fear, and most existed somewhere in between. That inconsistency was the real danger, not constant violence, but unpredictable justice.